Right. Well, hello and welcome everybody. I have got a Britney Spears style microphone on, so I don't know what I'm going to do. Might do something really entertaining, which would be unusual for those of you that know me. So, I'm Michael Johnston. Welcome everybody. I'm your host, moderator and the chair of the Castle Forum. I'm really honoured to hold that role, which is a new one for me. So I'll tell you about the Castle Forum a bit more in a second. But first of all, congratulations on making it here, because I gather some people couldn't find Octopus Energy HQ. So I think we're going to have a few stragglers, and we may have to send some sort of search party in case there's others sort of walking up and down Oxford Street. So yeah, I know I'm going to do a couple of sort of out-breaths, because some of you know I've been doing a house renovation and got a 2-year-old, so I'm a little bit knackered at the moment. So I'm going to be reliant on you guys to bring the energy and sort of collective energy. I keep using that word, but it's appropriate because we're at an energy firm. So. But yeah, thank you all for coming. We have plenty of time for drinks and food. I think we've got some pizzas coming later. And we will be, engaging you all in a discussion. So it's not going to be us with all the wisdom and expertise talking at you for the whole time. We're going to do some of that because we do have some real wisdom and expertise, and genuinely really excited about the speakers we've got. We've got a virtual speaker, Sarah Gillard, who will be joining us live from Anthropy in Cornwall. Some of you are familiar with that event. So there's going to be 4 speakers. Everyone's going to talk for 5 minutes or so to give a sort of perspective provocation. And then, I'm really keen to involve you guys as much as you would like, because I know there's as many wise people, great people in the audience as there are up here. Or more, because there's more people up there. I've got a couple of notes just to make sure I don't forget anything. I guess, first of all, thank you to Alex Bacon from Octopus for having us. And thank you to Mario and Octopus generally. This is a really cool space. Welcome, Stanley. Hello, nice to see you. Stanley's one of our regulars and inspirational types, so lovely to see you. Thank you, Stanley. No, yeah, I know. You're not the only person to have struggled with that. Welcome, Ben, as well. Nice to see you. So thank you to Octopus. Octopus, I'm not on the Octopus payroll, but I am an Octopus customer. So I experience you guys as a customer. And you're way better than Shell Energy, who I was with before. And that's not a high bar. You are, so I'm someone that's been in this kind of better business, how do we use business as a force for good world for quite a long time, and the other speakers too. And there aren't that many sort of genuinely great examples of businesses that have managed to strike the commercial piece, which is vital. You've got to make money, otherwise you're not a business, with the positive impact in the world. And I think that's for a whole bunch of reasons related to, obviously, the core business, but also the way you treat your people and all kinds of other kind of cultural factors which are fairly unique, certainly for a big and super commercially thriving business. So for those of us that have been in this game a while and have sort of been facing the headwinds from the US and various other kind of, I guess, short-term pressures that can sometimes take the mind away from those longer-term impacts, being here is super inspiring and is going to give us all lots of energy. So, Castle Forum. Castle Forum was the Castle debates for almost 15 years and was set up by our founder, Pamela Castle. This is the first rebranded, relaunched version, iteration, now Castle Forum, and it's the first event that we've had following Pamela's passing at the end of last year. Pam was and continues to be someone who's really inspired me. She's one of the genuine good people. I won't say more than that. Many of you are familiar with who she is, but feels quite special to be hosting this one in Pam's honour. I know she'd be, or is maybe, depending on where she is, absolutely delighted that we've relaunched this, and it's going to carry on to go from strength to strength with the support of Pam's family and lots of other people. I wanted to hand over to David Castle, Pam's husband, to say a couple of words. Over to you, David. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Yep. Well, Pam would be so pleased that the debates are continuing, and I'd certainly like to thank Michael and the other people that have become involved to continue them, and long may they do so. I mean, the environment needs even more help now than it did when Pam started the debates 15, 16 years ago. I mean, in some ways, events have improved the environment, but I mean, all the terrible wars that have happened have caused so many problems, and unfortunately war tends to take control, and environment issues are pushed to the side, I'm afraid. It's inevitable. I'm very pleased that Nathan Castle has actually joined the team and has helped organising this, and I'm really looking forward to the future developments of Castle Forum. I think the change of name is excellent, and I'm sure Pam would have approved it as well. So may the Castle Forum go on from strength to strength, and thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Couple of housekeeping points. First of all, there will be a camera going around taking a few photos to capture some nice images, and those, I'm not a big social media user, but some of us are, and so you might see photos popping up on LinkedIn and things. If you would rather your photo wasn't featured, just let us know after this and we'll respect that. And then the other thing is fire and safety. So Alex, tell us.
So on? Yeah. Down here and straight ahead, it's easier if I point. If you're standing here, you can see it right on your right, down the stairs, and that's how you get out the building. There is no alarms that are to be tested, so if anything does go off, it is a fire. And if you are handed the mic, don't hold it here, don't hold it here. You want it close so we can hear you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. So no fires expected. Make a prompt exit if necessary. So, topic for today. Lovely to see Pam with us. Topic for today is future of business, which is quite broad, but as has been discussed already, there aren't that many great examples of businesses that are focused on more than short-term profit at the moment. That's an exaggeration. Octopus is bucking that trend. But I guess the key topic today is how can business continue, or maybe even do a lot more, to be a force for good in the world, given that we've got so much sort of terrible stuff, that short-term pressures happening. So we'll discuss that quite a bit. I had a thought, and this is an optional thought. I'm going to sit down before we get onto the panel discussion. One of the things that I've found to be super helpful in terms of grounding positive energy, creativity, and connection for a group of people is some breathing exercises. So this is not going to be a long breathing exercise. I'm nodding to my podcast co-host Joel up in the audience. Joel does this much better than me. But something called square breathing, which is, I think, nice and easy to remember. So for those people that are not very good at remembering things, squares, 4 things, it's 4 breaths, and this is optional. It's going to be a breath in through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, a breath out through your mouth for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then do that 3 more times to get to 4. So it won't take very long. You can close your eyes or not, and then maybe tell me over a refreshing drink later whether you found it to be helpful or not. But just something a little bit different. We definitely haven't done these before at the Castle debates. I did actually do this exercise with a bunch of corporate lawyers. I'm looking at Dan Gray, who works for one of the big corporate law firms, not that long ago, and even they thought it was helpful. So bit of square breathing. So I'm going to start, and the advice is that you can close your eyes or not. I'm not going to close my eyes, because otherwise I might sort of fall asleep given my 2-year-old. But if we start by just breathing in for 4 seconds through your nose. Hold for 4 seconds. And then out for 4 seconds. And hold. In for 4 seconds through your nose. Hold. And breathe out. I'm relaxing already. 2 more times. In through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold. And breathe out. And then this is the last one. In for 4 seconds. Hold. And breathe out. Thank you very much. Sorry if that was a bit weird for anyone, but I feel better, so hopefully I'll be better at this job having done that. But yeah, thank you very much. One last thing, and then we are going to go into the panel. So some of you know that I like a dad joke. So how about this one? It's a knock-knock joke. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. An octopus. Yay. Right, there we go. That went well, didn't it? Okay. I won't do that one again. Didn't go down quite as well as I'd hoped. But here we all are, and now on to the serious business of how can business show up in the world in a positive way. Without further ado, Mario.
Thank you for the applause at the start, which relieves the pressure if you don't applaud at the end. I've already had one. And look, thank you for setting this up. What a great topic to be talking about impact a business can have, positive impact business can have on the world, and how humbling to be part of a company that is being recognized as doing that. It's definitely not easy. My career so far has been several years, in a number of companies where I think everyone felt they're doing well, but to be in somewhere where I genuinely feel I and everyone around me does feel that we're doing well for the world, and for it to be recognized by so many others is humbling and so rewarding. To introduce myself, I'm the commercial director here. You mentioned the word commercial earlier, which made me think about my job title and how, when I first joined, I thought, very quickly, I thought this title sort of feels a bit uncomfortable for me here, because this is not an organization that seeks to achieve commercial outcomes, certainly not as a priority. So I now think of it as a bit of a misnomer. I do a bunch of things, try to make sure that in those areas stuff adds up, at least some of the numbers do, but it's about much more than that. But as a bit of a background, I think just to introduce, when I was asked to present here by Alex and was told the subject is how businesses can be a force for good, whenever I think of that, I think back to an experience of mine, so sort of a bit of my story here, and that is, I'll go way back. Way back, I've always cared about the environment. So this is being in a company that is seeking to make energy cheaper and greener and to help decarbonize the world, not just the UK, is something that would have always appealed to me from a very young age. But I didn't get into this area. I didn't join Greenpeace. And partly because I felt like renewables and doing good for the world was something that we should all do personally. We should all recycle. We should all seek to minimize our carbon footprint. But for a career, it was not what I was going to do. I was not going to work for a charity, for example. And at that point, certainly when I was younger, I didn't see how business could necessarily drive the change. I thought businesses would always drive self-interest and shareholder interest. I think we recognize that. A lot of people would sympathize with that message. So my first point in business, actually before I joined business, I went on. I did a year. My gap year was voluntary work. I went to the Ukraine, where they're right now having war. I was in Kharkiv for 6 months. From there, I went to Brazil, and I was doing voluntary work in Brazil. So, I did what I thought was my part for the world, but then I can't do that for a living. I needed to move into something else. So I went to banking, like the opposite side. I was in banking for a few years. When I was at Barclays, I read an article in The Economist, the title of which was About the Price of Fish. And I remember it distinctly. This article was about how an entrepreneur started exporting or bringing secondhand mobile phones to developing countries, and gave the example of a town where there were fishermen that would go out and catch fish, and then they'd have to decide which town to go to, which port to go to. And it's a bit of guesswork. You could have all the fishermen, all the boats that come into one town, and now they've got a glut of fish. The price of fish drops, so they don't do well out of it. A lot of fish goes spoiled, and there's another town nearby, another port, where the market's empty. Bringing mobile phones there ensured this equilibrium was immediately achieved. The fishermen knew how much fish they should catch. They knew which port to go to, so they could get the right price, and also so everyone could get fish, could get their food. And it didn't go on, it just spoke about the economics of this, the economics of mobile phones in developing countries. What I took from that, what I realized was an entrepreneur doing a business, made a ton of money, and went and improved the livelihoods of so many people, millions of people, in a way that no charity could have done, no aid work could have done. And I realized in that moment, wow, like business can be a force for good. Years later, I was inspired to see how renewables were really taking off. And it was not just a peripheral thing, that we really could get to a world where green energy and net zero was possible. And at that point, I decided to seek out Octopus. After many, many years of knocking on the door, I was not many years. After some time of knocking on the door, they allowed me in. So here I am.
Thank you.
That's my story.
Thank you very much.
Hello. You should have had the timer. I've got the timer. So, the future of business. So, we're sat here with Octopus. When I think of business, I often think of that famous description of Goldman Sachs as a vampire squid stuck to the face of humanity, sticking its blood siphon into anything that smells of money. Because we've got a cephalopod theme here. I used to be a marine biologist, so I know about these things. But I wanted to set a stall in my 5 minutes of the podcast I do, The Futurenauts. We tend to ask 3 questions. How effed are we? Why are we effed? And how do we un-eff ourselves? And I'm going to very briefly use that. So, how effed are we? I think if you've been paying attention over the last 6 months, you've seen a national emergency briefing on climate change in Westminster, to which 6 MPs probably turned up, virtually no business leaders. We've had the MI6 paper released on the risk of biodiversity and natural systems collapse. So this is our national security people now telling us we're in serious trouble. And then just yesterday, you would have seen the article in the Times about a report from DEFRA saying our food system in the UK could collapse by 2030. We've also just watched a genocide take place in real time, and we have creeping political authoritarianism. Where is our business leadership in the teeth of these challenges? And I put it to you that it's absolutely not turning up in the way that it should. Philip K. Dick, the sci-fi writer, said, reality is that which when you stop believing in it doesn't go away. And these things are not going away. And that's before we even start to talk about AI and robotics and automation. Every time you get on the tube at the moment, you will be seeing, when you scan your Oyster card, an advert for JP Morgan. JP Morgan is still the single biggest financier of new fossil fuel infrastructure in the world, about $500 billion. So every time you're tapping in and out and it's saying, get cash back, these are the people who are driving us off a cliff. So this is the stuff that we know, and this is the stuff that's still being systemically denied. Now, my job as a futurist is not to predict and analyze the future of business, but to try and stretch the imagination of the possible. So our leadership is not showing up. We are closer to collapse than I think that we appreciate. If you remember 2008, the collapse of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, the 2 big mortgage providers in the US, it was all fine while the music was playing until suddenly it really wasn't. What we have engineered is profitable fragility. So we're making a ton of money whilst actually bringing ourselves to the brink of collapse. And, you know, the food system is perhaps the best embodiment of that, but it's pretty much happening everywhere. And that's because we've financialized those systems. They're not about producing food. They're actually about making money, which is why the UK is less than 50% food self-sufficient, and we have a just-in-time delivery system that will collapse in days. So all you need is a few geopolitical spanners being thrown into the works, and you're going to get hungry people in this country incredibly quickly. Because the purpose of the businesses in that food system is not to feed people, it is to derive profit. So we're in big trouble. I go back to this image. You might have seen this in the Guggenheim in New York about 10 years ago. It was an installation of a robot which was leaking its own hydraulic fluid and had to scrape its own hydraulic fluid back in to its own tank in order to keep itself going. That piece was called Can't Help Myself. The system we have at the moment can't help itself, with some notable exceptions. So I think the future of business is going to come to a very sharp and abrupt moment, not far from where we are now, where the contracts we're writing, the insurance that we're trying to put in place is no longer going to be possible. And then things are going to have to change really quickly. So for me, the future of business is going to be more anarchic. It's going to be localized. It's going to be bioregional. It's going to be co-owned. It's going to be regenerative. Because there are more than one way, or is more than one way of running this system than the way that we're currently doing it. Some of the best organizations in the world are the ones that recognize this. And the example I always use is Mondragon in the Basque Country. It's a cooperative. It has 80+ different co-ops, employs 70,000 people. Its motto is humanity at work. The future of business is about real purpose in service to the health of all life. Anything else is part of the delusion.
Yeah, and on that happy note, so... Yeah, fair enough. I was quite, because we had a conversation just earlier, and I said, oh, actually, I'm perhaps crazily optimistic. And he said, oh, I'd like to hear that. So now you're going to. Hello, I'm Sarah Mukherjee. I'm Chief Executive of the Institute of Sustainability and Environmental Professionals, which is, as its name would suggest, the professional institution for anyone involved in sustainability. And, you know, I'd probably rather like Ed, wake up in the morning, switch on the radio, bang my head against a brick wall, laugh or cry or whatever eye-wateringly insane thing is happening in the news that morning, respond to it. But I do have a bit of... Sorry, I did ask whether I got a white cat for sitting in this chair, but I get a pink octopus instead, so I'm now clutching it like a comfort blanket. Because the conversations that I have with business leaders and with people who are curious about sustainability are not the ones I hear reflected. Now, look, I'm not completely naive. I know that it is not a good time. We have had members who've been fired because they're gay, because they're people of colour, and they work in the States. They've been taken off their sustainability work. Whole teams have been made redundant. I'm not sugarcoating that. But I think that to make the case for sustainability in business as a business method is much easier now than it was even 5 years ago, partly for the reasons that Ed mentioned. Because if you supply chocolate or coffee or cocoa or wheat or barley, you can see the cliff over which you are going to drop. I know, because we work with about 300 different organisations, large, small, public sector, private sector, on their skills and training, that they see it too, and it's now rising up their risk register. If you want to build a bridge, you might not get funding for the back end of that because there might not be the weather conditions for that bridge to even be standing in 10 or 15 years, depending on where you see in the world. To the point about insurance, the insurance model was, we take money off all of you and we give it to a few of you every year. Now it's, we take money off all of you and we have to give it to probably 80% of you every year because that's what's happening. Again, that's not sustainable. But, and this is where I think that we have really failed as a sustainability sector, despite all of this, despite all of the stuff that we were talking about 20 years ago, and I remember someone from the Grantham Institute saying to me when I was a reporter, do you know what, we're going to start seeing European summers of 40-odd degrees. And I remember thinking at the time, yeah, right. But here we are. Here we are. We have people moving from Southern Europe to Northern Europe because they can no longer bear to live summer after summer with the risk of fire and the risk of drought. But we have not made the strong enough case to make this stick with ordinary people. And I think partly because we have allowed the sustainability space to be sucked up by a lot of people of extreme privilege who seem to think that sustainability is some sort of luxe lifestyle choice, when most people, and I come from a background of massive dysfunction, you know, getting to the end of the week and working out what bill you didn't pay was basically the collective, took the collective bandwidth of the family. So telling people, oh, just buy a 60 grand electric vehicle or just eat organic food, you might as well say, oh, just fly to the moon. We disconnect people of colour by banging on about flying. Flying is 2% of global emissions. Fast fashion is 10. I've been told many times by my own family, why are we saving the planet if we can't go and see our family and friends? And when people disconnect, they disconnect completely. So we need to find a way of showing how this new reality actually can make your life even marginally better. And I absolutely get what Ed says, and I don't disagree. But votes mean prizes. And unless we can persuade enough people in a democratic system that this matters and they will be better rather than worse off in whatever way you want to articulate that, I think we are just going to end up, you know, shouting at the moon and becoming ever and ever more at the fringes. I really don't want to see a point at which the high point was when we had cross-party agreement for the Climate Change Act in 2008, and it was all downhill from there. And we, in the sustainability sector, I think we're part of the problem. We need to find out find a way of articulating to people that they get benefit from a world that is run on more sustainable rules. For example, and I'll finish here, government proposals that if you host renewable infrastructure, you get the benefit by reduced electricity or indeed free electricity. That is brilliant. That gives people a reason to support and become advocates rather than just someone that something happens to in a community, which is most people most of the time. So we are inching towards the solutions, but as Mario and Ed have said, we need to find those much faster. Thank you.
Right. I think we might be able to get another Sarah up on the screen. Look at that. Look at that. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Well, virtually.
Thank you so much for your patience. I know we've kept you waiting a little while, and you've probably got something fun to go and do in Cornwall this evening later.
Battle with the hail. I'm really sorry my head is about 30 feet across as well. When I saw the size of the screen in the room, it was horrific. So sorry I'm being subjected to my enormous face.
Well, thank you for joining us. You're coming to us from Anthropy, which is a big gathering of people that are trying to make the world better through business in many cases. Do you want to tell us whatever you like for the next 5 minutes or so? But thank you again.
Great. Will do, thank you. So yeah, Anthropy, about 2,000 people gathered at the Eden Project, and it's I think it's the 4th year that it's been running now, and it is a great energy boost for people who are battling to try and make the world a better place to sort of come together and realize that you're not alone and that there's loads of people actually doing this from all sorts of different angles. So we'd recommend for next year if anyone's interested. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm Sarah Gillard. I'm the CEO of a charity called Blueprint for Better Business. We were created after the financial crash to basically give leaders of particularly large listed businesses in the UK a space to talk about how business can reconnect with society and how business can be a force for good in society. So we've been at this for over a decade or so. And we've really been exploring the sort of tensions that have been described at the panel so far, this sort of growing societal expectations of business in terms of climate change or inequality or social cohesion, or increasingly the responsible use of AI and how that might impact society, and the personal responsibility that we as humans feel and business leaders feel and investors feel. So, you know, the sort of 3 a.m. wake up of, is this going in the right direction, and what role am I playing in shaping a better future? So there's that sort of pressure on the one hand versus the structural constraints that prevent or limit action towards those positive outcomes. So basically, as the panelists have described in various ways, the system in general has been designed to optimize for short-term financial performance. And that is often in conflict with these longer-term, more human, more holistic, systemic goals that we are aiming for. Business models, capital markets, the pressure for growth, it tends to create very different incentives for people inside businesses. So on the one hand, you have this sort of positive intent, and on the other hand, you have the systemic constraints that really limit it. And for a while, probably for the first decade or so of Blueprint being in existence, it felt like actually there was quite a good movement, a sort of individual volunteerism. So individual CEOs or exec team leaders or chairs of large companies talking about how they wanted their business to demonstrably make the world a better place and making commitments about that. And there's this kind of general sense of progress. And I think, you know, as others have described, perhaps the last couple of years or so, the context, particularly for large listed businesses, to be overt about all the ways in which they are intending to make the world a better place, it's become a much more difficult place for that to happen. And actually Octopus, and I don't say this just because they're hosting the panel, Octopus are one of the few organizations who are consistently talked about in the conversations that we have in terms of being a large commercially successful business that is still overtly talking about making the world a better place and following through. So the context has changed a lot. And we've done some research recently with a consultancy called Claricid to try and find out, well, what helps when the context shifts? What is it that allows large businesses and small businesses to continue to stay the course if it's not just the kind of positive intent of leaders? That, you know, that's sufficient. Sorry, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. You have to have the positive intent of leaders, but the pressures that the system will put on them need to be sort of resisted in some way. And what we found was a couple of things. So first of all, you know, as others have said, really ensure that your business has a clear purpose and that it is central to how the organization creates value. So this is not a kind of marketing slogan or a sort of side thing. What is your business there to do? And is it actually creating supporting the long-term well-being of people and planet? And if it isn't, then begin to shift your business model, because particularly as the future looks very different from the past, if you are not really clear as a business how you are creating societal value and serving the common good, it's going to be much more difficult to attract talent, investment, be credible, frankly, in a changing world. So the first thing is ensure that your business has a clear purpose that is about creating some kind of positive outcome for people and planet, and make sure it's true. But the second thing, and this is the crucial thing, is that you have to protect it. It's not enough just to have kind of positive intent and some slogans. And there are 3 areas that we've discovered are really crucial for this. The first one is one that all organizations can do, which is, what is the shared understanding within the organization of what the organization exists to do? What's the collective mindset? Is it that we're really here to maximize profit and we'll do some purpose stuff on the side or some ESG stuff because that protects our reputation, in which case it's not going to work. You're going to create disillusionment and disattachment and sort of cynicism and whatever else. So how do you create the shared understanding of what the business is really there to do, and make sure that that is permeated through the whole organization through dialogue and mutual understanding? And profit is seen as a fuel for that, really important, a fuel to help you go further and faster, but not the goal. The goal is the sort of societal value. The second lever are the governance levers. And again, every organization can implement these. What's the composition of your board? Do you have nature as a voice on your board? Do you have employees as a voice on your board? How are you creating the governance mechanisms, the operating system within the organization to protect purpose when the pressure gets on it? Are there specific roles in your organization that be that voice for when the pressure comes? How do you define value in your organization? Is it just financial value, or are there other more holistic ways of defining value? Because that changes how decisions are made. What do you report on? And are your incentives aligned? Because it's all very well saying we as an organization aim to create X, Y, Z societal value, but then only incentivize people on the financial goals. So what's the sort of operating system of your business? And is it well designed to actually create the positive outcomes that you say that you want as an organization? The third thing, and this is a sort of ultimate protective, but we recognize that not every business is able to do this immediately, is to look at the legal levers that are available to you. So what the sort of hardwiring. Are you able to change your articles of association that give you some protection for when the context shifts and the pressure comes on your organization? Golden share models, steward ownership models. What are the ways in which your organization is able to survive leadership changes or market pressure and maintain its intention and action in creating positive outcomes in the world, so that when the wind changes direction or the context changes, you're still able to maintain that direction? So that's sort of a summary. I've got a lot more to say, but in the 5 minutes that I had, a summary of what we're learning about what it takes to maintain not just positive intent, but actual action, even when the context becomes challenging.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sarah in Cornwall, do you have any time constraints? I'm sure you've got some time constraints, but are you able to stay with us for a little while longer while we discuss?
As long as you like.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I really want a pink octopus, but I can stay as long as I want.
Okay. Well, I am respectful of people's time. I think we'll try and wrap for, I was going to say the fun part of the evening, but this is fun too. But the social later, and a playlist that's been developed by various musical creative geniuses and me. So I reckon we'll run for about 40 minutes till just past 7:30 to give you guys plenty of time to be part of this conversation too, and then we'll let Sarah and everybody else go off and also stay here if they like to. Okay, I've got loads of questions, so I can ask some of them, but I'd rather not. Does anyone else have a question or something they'd like to say? Thank you very much. A lady has raised her hand. I've got this really cool square thing, and I was going to kick it into the audience, but then now I'm a bit conscious I'll probably hit someone in the face. So can I throw this to you? Are you happy with that? This is a microphone. Just speak into it like that. Here we go. Yeah. Maybe just say your name and a brief question. That'd be great. Thank you.
Sport I've done. Molly Webb, Energy Unlocked. We've met many years ago. I am speaking to board members next week about AI and climate governance because I've focused on the intersection of AI or digital and climate my whole career. What would you say is one thing that you would want to say to board members at this moment?
Who would like to take that first? One thing to board members. Sarah, thank you.
Oh, I think other Sarah would like to. Would you like to go first?
One of the Sarahs.
I'll jump in first. I've got the microphone. So I would say there is a massive potential opportunity around data because people are ridiculously self-centered around their data. They keep it, they don't share it, and what happens is that there's very few single points of truth. And I think our ability, although this is a risk in itself as well, because once we start getting real-time data on the effects, the carbon impacts that organizations are having, this will give citizens and advocates really clear information about what you're doing and what you say you're doing and what the gap is in between. So I'd say there's a real opportunity with that, but there's a real risk that comes with it as well. Now, no more green hushing. You've got to be really on this, because if you're not, somebody else will be.
Can I just ask what green hushing is for anyone that doesn't know?
So green hushing, or greenwashing. So greenwashing is saying things that you're doing which you're not, and sounding you're a bit greener than you are. Green hushing is not being as open as you could be about your good green stuff, because you think you're going to get monstered in the Daily Mail.
Okay,
Not specifically. Other papers are available, obviously.
Yeah.
But
And any paper owned by a billionaire who has interest in keeping things the way they are.
which
Some
is not
billionaires
all of them, yes.
are disruptors. Anyway, not billionaire bashing.
Well,
Ed.
I'm going to put Mario on the spot. I'm going to say, what does Octopus do with AI and climate governance? How are you using AI to improve your own climate governance? Because you guys are up there at the bleeding edge, I would say.
I'm not sure we're using AI specifically for climate governance, but I think for a business where maybe energy and sustainability is non-core, then that would be something that they would be doing on the side. Whereas for us, it's sort of like everything we do. But how are we using AI? I think AI is used kind of a bit broadly, but just taking data maybe as a bit of a more important fact. We've completely transformed the way that energy is being understood. I think if you look back several years, and we're not talking many years, just like honestly 5 years ago. In fact, when I joined, this was cool. I had just joined, and the government released a white paper that they'd been working on for a very, very long time. And in this white paper, it name-checked a number of companies, be it National Grid, Centrica, others, for stuff that they were doing. And with regards to changing how energy works. Every company that was mentioned in this white paper was mentioned once. Guess how many times Octopus was mentioned? Bear in mind, 5 years ago, Octopus was a small company, very small. Any thoughts? 19. So this is, back to the question of data, very, very simply. An extraordinary amount of data is needed for us to change from what was a completely analog kind of approach to creating supply, generation in order to meet demand. Whereas what we're trying to do is generate, create a more flexible system, and that requires a lot of smarts and tech. But to answer your original question of what you might say to board members or shareholders that are not in this sector, talking more broadly about maybe sustainability or other things, my thought for them would be, if they were a business with a purpose, because it's not necessarily about sustainability, but like generally focused on things that do good, and sustainability might be one of those. It has bottom line benefits, and they might be blind to the cost of not employing that approach. To give one example, where I was in businesses where I was previously, staff churn was very, very high. I was a CPO in a company where we had engineers, software engineers, who can get a job tomorrow. It was not uncommon for us to have staff churn in the software engineering team. It was between 30 and 50%, depending on the year, depending on the inflation in the city at the time. Thank you. Here in our tech department, to be honest, it's been a while since I looked at the figure, but for the first several years that I looked at the figure, staff churn was about 0, like approximately 0. We had 2 people leave out of about 400 software engineers. Sorry, 3 people left. One of them came back. The business benefit of those engineers that have built Kraken, where you don't have that brain drain and you've got people that are accumulating knowledge and experience, etc., that has huge bottom line benefits. A lot of that is culture, etc., but a lot of that is purpose. And of course, it's a virtuous cycle where the purpose helps the culture and the culture helps the purpose and so on.
Thank you very much. I will come to, yeah. Yeah, Sarah, did you want to come in? Otherwise I can come to you for the next question.
Well, it was just to do a bit of a plug, actually, because I'm in Cornwall talking about AI quite a lot on panels. And we as a charity have just spent the last year or so doing various roundtables trying to create a one-page framework to help boards have this conversation around AI. And so it's published on the website, it's all free, you can download it, Blueprint for Business. Just type in AI framework and it should come up. But basically what we're finding is boards are tending to have conversations about AI in a very narrow financialized framing, which is how far can we put it inside our organization and how much efficiency and productivity might we get from it? And of course, that's probably the first step for any board to be thinking about. But what our questions do in the framework is try to encourage broader conversations at board level, basically around purpose. What is this organization trying to achieve long term? How might AI help us achieve that? And if the purpose is about human well-being, flourishing, positive impact on society and nature, then AI becomes a tool to help with those things rather than just a tool to help with financial goals, which otherwise, it might be sort of pigeonholed at. So this framework has a number of questions, and one of them around stewardship is how are we using AI for the benefit of all, including future generations and the planet? So it just is a conversation catalyzer for boards to be thinking about the long-term stewardship of their organization and the impact that it has long-term on society. And what we're finding is boards are appreciating the scaffolding that gives them to have this conversation, because otherwise it becomes a very sort of narrow efficiency and productivity conversation.
Thank you very much. Scaffolding came down on my home renovation today. I was delighted about it. But scaffolding is very helpful, of course. Another question. Stanley, got your hand up. Can someone pass the microphone to Stanley? Thank you.
Wonderful to be here, and wonderful to know that the Castle debates continue unabated. My question is, are we looking enough at the downside of AI? Every time you Google, ask Google the question, what time is it in Beijing? There's probably a measurable impact on sea level rise because of the energy implication of these uses of AI. I think it's really bizarre that we're going full tilt into AI at a time when we're now saying that energy companies can have, AI companies can have their own energy supplies and so on and so forth. But nobody's really talking about the downside in terms of climate change, and they haven't said all this. It's just my thought. And Copilot, what a total nonsense that is.
Thank you. AI and energy consumption. I don't know, Mario, if you've got any thoughts on that.
I do, but maybe Ed, as a futurist, probably will be more eloquent on this matter. I think so. It's very hard to try and put a stop to a technology once it's been invented. I don't think any of us are going to be able to stop AI here, and despite its environmental impact. But I think there are some favorable wins here, so to speak. Precisely because the demands of AI on the energy grid are so great, they'll be faced with huge economic challenges. Just look at what OpenAI has lost in the past year. Like, they are burning through billions, and at a certain point, that breaks, and or rather, either it breaks or it fixes itself. And it's not going to fix itself because we're suddenly going to build a huge amount of generation capacity. Like, we're just not going to build that fast enough. So it breaks because the economics don't work. So they'll either massively increase the costs, like it's not going to be free AI, or it solves itself because the models improve their compute, or they need less compute to get the results. So one way or another, I think it might solve itself. And the other thing is that we actually think technology is a great way to also help solve problems. So when we're talking about a smart grid that knows when to charge your car and when to discharge your car, for example, you need good technology for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing that Stanley's raised here is obviously the gargantuan energy consumption. If you look at an organisation like Google, their emissions are actually up 48% in the last 5 years. At the same time, we're all supposed to be going in one direction. They've gone manifestly in the other. I think the shakedown...
Sorry to interrupt, but the Google are signatory to all kinds of climate pledges. How could that possibly be the case?
Well, exactly. I mean, this is the thing. They've just ignored it. This is why I talk about the absence of leadership, because Google, Microsoft, they've all quietly abandoned their commitments and their pledges, which were made. I mean, Microsoft was supposed to be going carbon positive. They were pledging to, absorb all of the carbon they'd ever emitted since their founding. And of course, they've just quietly shelved all of that because of the gargantuan appetite for energy that AI has. I do think the shakedown will happen the minute we apply it mindlessly. I mean, again, to Stanley's point, do I need to use AI to find out what time it is in Beijing? No. I mean, we've built it into every search, which is complete overkill. And maybe there is a pinch point coming when the hundreds of billions which are being squandered as part of this arms race, which is what it effectively is, because everyone is trying to reach dominance. And we don't know who the big successful player will be, and so everyone is throwing everyone at it. Now, it's possible the bubble will burst before there's a clear winner, and then we're going to see real chaos. And I don't want to be the collapsnik and keep talking about collapse, but we always think we're fine right up until the moment we're manifestly not. And there's lots of people talking about the financial risk of an AI collapse and the end of a boom and bust cycle, because these companies are so chronically over-leveraged in a way which almost has no historical precedent.
Either of the Sarahs on AI and energy, or I'll take another
I have
question.
some fun things to say too, by the way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I will. I'll make some gags later.
I'd like to take another question. A gentleman here with his arm raised. Do we have a microphone close by? Oh, look, got one. Just make sure the green light is on, I think.
It is. Ashley Seeger, we're from Sunfinet. We're a developer of solar and battery projects. Is it any wonder that businesses are struggling to come to terms with what they've got to do when you've got all the debate the last 3 weeks is, let's dig up more oil and gas from the North Sea, Miliband's a clown, the Tories and Reform, with respect, Stanley, are all into let's dig up more fossil fuels. Is it any wonder that businesses struggle with this when the political climate's so negative?
Okay, politics. Sarah Mukherjee, maybe?
Thank you. Thanks for that one. Yeah, I know where you're coming from, but I go back to the point that in politics, points mean prizes. What we haven't done as a sector is to make a clear and well-articulated case for why this, because we all rested on our laurels. Everybody signed up to the Climate Change Act. Everything was going in one direction. As you said, loads of companies were signing all these pledges. And so, the Solar Association actually got Annie Lennox as their stage show, would you believe, at one event, which I attended as a journalist. The stage show was Annie Lennox, and at one side there was Mick Jagger, and I looked somewhere else, and there was, another Oscar winner. And it all became, oh, it's fine. And the problem is, and as a former journalist, and still involved in comms, if you stop communicating, then someone comes and fills that vacuum. And they filled it with a very easy narrative. Net stupid zero. If only you just didn't have all this green nonsense, then we'd save you 300 quid a year. Easy. But working in solar, that, and I think it's fair to say, for probably the first time, and certainly in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, you can now say you can get a job outside a big city that is sustainable, that is lifelong, and that will take you around the world in something like solar. Do you know what you'll know this, our flashing red light is for skills? It's not people wafting around with lattes in offices, it's welders. Welders, because we literally do not have enough people to build the green economy. And part of the reason is, if you talk to people who support welders, is because they think if they join renewables that they are scabbing their mates in the oil and gas sector, because that's what they're being told. You're going to do all this green nonsense and you're putting us out of a job. So that's a communications failure on our part. We have got to find a way, I think partly as it is the things that you can do. And I appreciate your point, Ed, about, we're standing on the edge of the precipice, but we'll still be standing there, or we'll be over it, and nobody will be supporting us either. We've got to find a way of standing on it and actually bringing people to help us climb up the cliff. I'm wildly overextending that analogy. And I think we start with the things that we can start. We are really good at letting the perfect get in the way of the good. We all get up in the morning, I can't have enough water in my shower, must turn the water down and turn it off. Should I use shampoo? Oh my God, no. Has it got nanoplastics in? Go down for breakfast. What can I have that's sustainable? I mean, enough already. People just want to get to work and have a nice life and spend time with their families. And we are doing stuff that helps them to do that, and we're doing it with joy and love. Final thing before I stop ranting, and that is, if you want a business that will attract young people, then you do it with purpose. And I'm sure you're finding this at Octopus, that the people under 35 want to work at places where they feel that they are doing some good. They want to do good, and that is a very powerful incentive for your skill set.
Thank you very much indeed. Sarah, I'd like to come to you in Cornwall, but before I do, I was just reflecting I might have to get a job as a welder, because basically all I do is waft around having lattes in offices. So, welding for me.
I think Octopus must be the best balance between the two, though, mustn't it? Because you must have engineers and people wafting around drinking lattes. So that's a good combo.
Given that I'm not an engineer, I'm not sure what that says about me.
Sarah in Cornwall. I think I haven't been as close to Anthropy this year as I was last year, because I was there last year. I think there's politicians on sort of different sides of aisles. Even the fact that they sit on different sides of aisles is probably something that we might need to reflect on and change. But politics and what are you hearing on politics in Anthropy or sort of generally?
So the opening session was this morning, and we had the CEO of Ipsos talking about the kind of state of the nation and where the nation is at. And she was basically saying, look, I could give you a load of very negative facts. 8 out of 10 Britons think the future will be worse. And that's the highest it's ever been. Keir Starmer's the least popular prime minister ever, including Liz Truss. So there are a lot. She basically said there are loads of reasons to not be cheerful. And yet, here are the reasons to be cheerful. And there weren't that many. But her point was, we lack a positive narrative in the UK at the moment. And without a positive narrative, it becomes very difficult to begin to build anything good. Entrepreneurs struggle, kids struggle, that there is a sort of cumulative effect. And I think we have sort of collectively bought into this apocryphal negative story, which means that people tend not to want to look at the future, and they tend to want to resist, change. And I think there was somebody at Anthropy last year with a T-shirt that I wanted to steal off her because it said, "If you want to change the world, throw a better party." And I think there's a truth there that we need to get better at telling the better story about what the future could look like that inspires hope, optimism, courage, action, collaboration, innovation. Because at the moment people are feeling pretty bleak. And I think when we look at the sort of political system as a whole, I'm not sure that there's a huge amount of hope and optimism and courage and innovation coming from that area. And I think it would be interesting. And, actually that's not true. There are pockets of it, but those pockets are where there tends to be quite a lot of energy and that it's getting quite a lot of traction. So I think telling a positive story about the future would be a good start.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, Ed.
But I think Sarah's absolutely right. And I think the challenge on that is that the simplistic narratives are compelling, but they're absolutely wrong. And we are trying to make more nuanced arguments. I mean, if you take the example that we've just been given of, like, we should be drilling for more North Sea oil and gas. I mean, the absolute truth of that is if we do that, it makes almost no difference to people's energy bills because the prices are set by international markets. So you go and drill our oil and gas, but you will not bring down people's bills. So people who claim that that's the case are telling a lie, and if you were to do that, there was a brilliant piece of research by Oxford University that said if we went hard at it and got all of our last bits of oil and gas out, it would probably bring our energy bills down by about £80 per household in the best case scenario. But going for renewables in the way that we're trying to do would bring down those bills by about £450 per household. That is the real story. And unfortunately, we're battling this tidal wave of misinformation because people are peddling simplistic narratives which are not true.
Yeah. I mean, on that best case scenario point, without getting too sort of energy wonky, but we are at an energy firm. I'm sure there's quite a few energy wonks in the crowd as well, but not everyone is. So, if just one kind of conflict or price shock would blow probably any of those savings out of the water pretty quickly. Mario.
Yeah, totally. I love that point, Sarah, that you're talking about optimism, and what this country needs. By the way, I know I sound American. I'm actually English. Long story.
Why do you sound American if you're English?
I went to an international school. Grew up in Italy. Went to international school in Italy. Sound American. My wife's Canadian. It's probably half her fault. Optimism, I think, for the country is so important for the economy. When you go to a company, like, I hope when you've walked in here and you've met some of the people who work at Octopus, you got that sense of optimism, that sense of energy, excuse the pun, that sense of ambition. We're going to do stuff. And if you had walked in here and you did not feel that, you would not feel this was going to succeed. This project is not going to succeed. I think of countries as a very, very large company. And so if there's not cohesion, if there's not alignment, if there's not optimism, a whole bunch of these things you'd expect of a company that is going to succeed, if you don't see that in the country, well, it's the same sort of thing. On that point of, what was I going to say about energy?
Energy markets, something about that?
Sorry, politicians. I think it's very easy to blame politicians because they're terrible. But also, it's very, very difficult for a politician to, I think, to be able to make some bold decisions sometimes without support of business. If Keir Starmer, or rather, when Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband go out and say we want to do more to get to net zero, or we want to do more on green, they get absolutely battered in the press. And if they don't change course quickly, or if they don't appear to change course quickly, they might be out. And all of a sudden, they really can't do anything. So, we see that our job, and certainly the job of those who are trying to make change, is to arm politicians with the true life examples of how we should be doing things, of how we should be winning. So when we, for instance, started Zero Bills Homes, it was largely to capture the imagination of the government, of policymakers, of the media, of consumers. It's not necessarily that at Zero Bills Homes gets to zero bills. I don't know, maybe it might be £100 or maybe a little bit less. We didn't really know when we started it. But we thought, let's just go with it. It's going to capture the imagination, and it has. And it's that kind of thing that then a politician can stand up and say, this is going to work. And so, yeah, I think in many ways we need to take back some of that responsibility.
Thank you. Just on that positive energy point, very briefly, and then I think we've got another question up towards the back of the people in the audience. But I learned the other day, and I don't know if anyone knew this, and I'll completely misremember the exact number, but 2012 was a boom year in the UK for babies, because at that time the UK felt like a pretty positive place to be. We were hosting the Olympics, and things seemed to be getting better, not worse. So lots of babies were born, and now I think that's changed quite a bit. So just, I don't know, a random fact for you. Question towards the back.
Hello, can you hear me?
If there's a green light, it should work.
I think I'm just going to go for it directly, I think. If you can hear me from there.
Yeah, there you're good. Thank you.
So my name is Tahir. I'm from NISO. And my question is primarily focused on Mario in some sense. I want to know what is your view on demand flexibility and how can that be improved in the future for GB, not from an operational perspective, but from a consumer's perspective. Because that's something which we as operational, in NISO see that, okay, demand flex is not growing. Because obviously after Russia, Ukraine, it's become a bit different. And you have a lot of other assets coming up. So what's your view on it? I just want to know that.
So I knew that there was some energy wonks in the audience. Demand flexibility, Mario, maybe tell us briefly what that is and then answer. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I rewind a little bit on how energy used to run and kind of still does, you can imagine the shape of energy consumption. If we start at midnight here, very, very low. It starts picking up maybe around 7 a.m. It goes up by about 7:30 a.m. here, starts dropping off throughout the day, stays kind of high. Around about 4 p.m., people get home, put the kettle on, put the oven on, put the TV on as well, showers, etc., and then it drops off. Now, generation has to match that supply. So you'd get the bodies that would manage that, and they'd basically pick up the phone and say, right, the frequency's looking a bit low, turn on the coal power plant, and then we're matching supply and generation, rather demand with the supply of generation. When we're talking about demand flexibility here, I think hand in hand with that, what we also need to talk about is generation flexibility or supply flexibility. It's not super easy to manage demand flexibility if we're just talking about normal household behavior. Although it is not only possible, sorry, I'm about to, at risk of contradicting myself massively here, but I'm going to talk about some successes that we've had, for example, with saving sessions. We've, for those of you who are Octopus customers, I hope a few of you, you may have received alerts from us about a saving session program where we're offering basically pennies to dial down demand in certain hours of the day. And we've seen, I think at peak, like 1 million or more households partake. And the turn down of generation there was equivalent to the city of Leicester going off, which I think is the equivalent of a couple coal power stations being turned on. And that is just from, because people do want to do the right thing. It's not like we were offering a ton of money to turn down. However, that's probably not enough for the kind of change that we're talking about. And so this is where I get to the second point, where dialing down demand, I think, needs to be done in a way that is where we take the problem away from the customer and start managing ourselves. In particular, I have in mind, as we're electrifying, and that is a one-way street. We are going to electrify. Like, we did not stop using whale oil because we ran out of that. And we are going to, transport is being electrified not because we're running out of oil, but because EVs are just much better. So that is going to happen. As that happens, you can imagine the skeptics only a couple of years ago were saying, well, hang on a second. You know, if generation, and especially renewables, can't keep up with that spike at 4 p.m. when people get home, what's going to happen when people plug in their car at 4 p.m.? Whoa, that's going to shoot through the roof. We're not going to be able to service that. Now, of course, the right way to think about this, and I'm sure all of you know here, is, no, hang on a second. The car has got a battery that can power a home. The average UK home can be powered for 7 days. So when the car gets home and you plug it in, the car starts powering the home, starts powering the network. And think of millions of cars throughout the UK. Like, we already have 2 gigawatts worth of, and by the way, 2 gigawatts is like a large nuclear power station. We've got 2 gigawatts worth of EVs that are plugged into our intelligent Octopus sort of system. And not many people have an EV yet. So, you know, imagine when that gets a lot bigger. One of the challenges is that's kind of just one way, so people plug in and we charge when the cost of energy is lower, and therefore when it's greener. They go hand in hand. It would be even better when, in future, there's a two-way, there's vehicle-to-grid technology. That is coming. We already have cars in the UK that are vehicle-to-grid. When that rolls out big time, it's going to have a huge impact. So that spike that we're talking about at 4 p.m., that should be completely flattened out as people plug in V2Gs. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. We've got a question, another one up at the back, please. Two at the back.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists. My name's Thomas. I work for Achieve Good. We're a consultancy that works with the government and the impact economy to develop private-public partnerships, tackling a variety of UK-based civic challenges. I also used to work at Clarisis and helped with the research. I'm really glad to see you here, Sarah, and talking about it. And kind of connected to that, I wanted to maybe bring this to a more personal level. A lot of what we're talking about here involves change, involves new ways of thinking, and that often involves professionals who have been working in their relative respective sectors, having to experience the discomfort of doing something different. And I think that can be a barrier. I've seen that in my work with procurement with government recently. They find it really difficult to take new frameworks on, even though they know the value is there. What kind of practical methods, either within a business or maybe through external services, can you undertake to help build that comfort doing something new, help build that comfort around maybe not being an expert anymore, despite being expected to be one?
Thank you so much. I really wanted to ask a question basically along those lines myself, so that's really good. Thank you. Comfortable with change, feeling comfortable to innovate, be creative. I think I've hopefully captured that. Yeah, Sarah.
Thank you. I think that's a brilliant question as well. And I suppose I would say this, wouldn't I? But it's for us, it's all about skills and training. We work with a lot of individuals and a lot of companies who are going through exactly this. So it's people having to widen their brief. And if you're a sustainability professional, you might have started out in corporate partnership or ESG, and now you're expected to do procurement and some of the legal stuff because of regulation. And the next stage, which a lot of companies are already, they've crested that hill. They now have everybody in an organisation who is doubly trained in sustainability and also in whatever they're doing. Because if you're thinking about a sustainable business of the future, well, you need HR specialists who'll be able to help you get the teams that you need. You need procurement, you need engineers, you need architects, lawyers, all of whom have an understanding of sustainability. So it starts, I think, with skills and training. Skills also bringing people together where everybody's equal, everybody's equally uninformed. and they all go along on that journey, not only supports the change because they're doing it together, but it also allows a lot of innovation. I mean, we do quite a lot of mass training in sometimes 20, 30,000 people, sub-Saharan Africa, and in the Middle East, North Africa as well. And the ideas that spin out of that opportunity of a lot of people being together within an organisation on the same learning journey, wherever they are in the structure, is profound. And sometimes they in themselves, because people who are working in the logistics side, they come and they do the training, they say, well, hang on a second, we can apply this in this way. So going on a learning journey together is not only brilliant for business, but it also really helps with that change management and also for people to skill in appropriate ways for the future.
Thank you. Just conscious of time, I'd like to maybe ask all four of our speakers today to comment on this, because it's a topic that's close to my heart. But Ed, we talked before this event started about the fact that so many people are overwhelmed right now. I agree with you, Sarah, that skills and training is really important, and learning is lifelong learning. Big fan of all of that. But given that people are so overwhelmed, giving them more things to do, I don't know, Ed, I'm not challenging, I'm agreeing with you, but maybe as a setup to Ed, what do you want to say on that?
Yeah, Sarah in Cornwall and I both work with an organisation called the Forward Institute, where we're often working with leaders trying to do new things and trying to do different things. And to Michael's point, they are often completely overwhelmed, overwrought, overloaded. They have very little capacity for the day job, let alone when you start to layer something else on it. But the thing that sticks with me, and we just did a Futurenauts interview with these guys as well, but Sam Conniff and his wife, Catherine Templer-Lewis, who run a thing called Uncertainty Experts, it's really worth checking out. You can do the online training, because what Sam and Catherine stumbled upon is the fact that our intolerance of uncertainty is what keeps us thinking rigidly. And actually, we need to dramatically change our tolerance for uncertainty in order to be able to change. And it's a really deeply embedded psychological defense. It probably served us very well in deep evolutionary history, but it doesn't work in a world which is only going to get more uncertain, more complicated, and more complex as we go forward. So I think there's something around that. And I think, again, not to sort of dismiss the skills and training, it's like we're trying to do things we've never done before. Octopus is a business that wouldn't have been able to exist 10 years ago, I'm right in saying, and one of the reasons that this organisation has been successful, I believe, is because it's not been burdened by the legacy assets of other energy companies. So it's been able to think smart, be curious, be innovative, and do things that haven't been done previously. Now, that's a mindset as much as it is about skills and training. And I think what we need for people going forward is to be able to embrace uncertainty and to keep that curious, playful, collaborative mindset within organizations, not to do what businesses are very good at, which is find something profitable and then stop change happening around them so they can carry on making money. Because that's the way most of the rest of the system works, with Octopus being one of the other, like we keep saying, one of the notable exceptions, because that's certainly what all the legacy businesses are struggling with.
I'll come to Mario last, if that's okay, because I think that'd be a good place to leave it. Conscious there's a gentleman at the back who had his hand raised, but you can perhaps come and grab us over a drink later. Yes, no, I'm going to come to Sarah. Mario is the last word. Sarah in Cornwall I wanted to come to. Thank you, Alex. Sarah, how do we get people comfortable with change, or comfortable maybe generally?
It's a good question, and I agree with what Sarah and Ed have said so far. I think there are three things that we have learned. The first is almost everyone knows that something's a bit off. They might have different ways of describing it, but something is a bit off, and getting them to places where they can explore that as a human, not as an executive, is really important. So if you put people in a boardroom, they'll tend to act like executive leaders. If you take them out onto the hills or sit around a campfire, they can talk like a human. So the first thing is try and find ways of getting people to respond as humans, not as masks or titles. The second thing is help people find a new mental model for what their role in this is. And this might not work for everybody, but one leader I was talking to, because of the stage he was at in his career, the mental model he found useful was he was Luke Skywalker, he's now becoming Obi-Wan Kenobi. So what's the mental model of how do you get people to focus on legacy and what they're enabling the next generation to create, rather than being the one that's holding the lightsaber and battling around? So what's the mental model that helps them go into a different mode that allows change to happen rather than grab onto what used to exist in the past? And the third thing was, what we found is people are much more ambitious and much more able to dream individually than they are collectively. So find ways of getting people to explore their most ambitious, wild dreams for what this business could be and the positive impact it could have individually, and then surface that with the correct amount of psychological safety and anonymity and all the rest of it to say, you as a group actually have this level of ambition individually, but when you talk as a group, it comes down to this level of ambition. And once people know that, they start looking around the table and going, oh, you've got the same dream I had. I never knew that. All we ever did was talk about spreadsheets and profit and loss accounts. And look, we're here, we both are privately dreaming about how this business could change the world, and we've never talked about it before. So find ways of surfacing the collective courage that probably exists at leadership team levels, but just hasn't found a way of being articulated yet. So it's all about humans and dialogue, basically.
Thank you so much. And allowing people to dream, it seems. That's a nice, positive, inspirational thing. Mario, just last word to you briefly. Octopus from the outside, I think I read somewhere that you don't have an HR department. Is that correct? Why are you guys so different? How are you allowing humans to be human, to dream, to innovate?
Thank you for such a good question. And actually, it's been answered so well already. And a number of the words that have been used are exactly the kind of words that I had in mind. Psychological safety is hugely important. Within the question, some of the things that came out, there was overwhelm, training, dealing with change, and so on. So we could probably talk all day about this. I think I'll say a couple things. One, reinforce the psychological safety, creating the environment where everyone feels that it is their job's not on the line if they get something wrong. If someone's got something wrong to the extent that it is significantly damaging to the business, it's not their fault. They've been given the keys to something that is obviously way above them, or there were not sufficient kind of controls to ensure that didn't completely spiral out of control. So the kind of things that could go wrong within the realm that someone is dealing with should be commensurate with their responsibilities, commensurate with their experience, etc. And if it's beyond that, it's your problem. If it's at the right level, then they should be allowed liberty, and they should be allowed to feel like their job's not on the line if they get something wrong. So that was kind of point one. The second thing, I'm not sure how much anyone knows about our organizational structure, is specifically, or rather particularly, in operations. There have been case studies on this. Really interestingly, I won't go into the fine details, but our customer service specialists, I think as many people might refer to them, here we call them energy specialists, and they are trained to do pretty much anything that you might think needs to be done on an account. Now, most people have fairly basic questions, and so you might think, oh, of course, they can deal with that. But actually, they're very well trained to deal with a high level of technical detail. In many other businesses, you'd say they can't do that. That actually we need to silo departments, and that ends up with people who are who eventually get dissatisfied because all they're supposed to do is just sort of that on the conveyor belt, and if it's something slightly different, they need to pass it on. Now, to begin with, when we adopted this model, and certainly I've adopted teams that from other companies, including from Shell, where they felt perhaps overwhelmed at being presented with a whole lot of more responsibility and a huge amount more of demand and change. But for them to understand, actually, it's fine. You can do this. And giving them that confidence, giving them that psychological safety net has been hugely, hugely important. I think, whenever I come across someone, example, when you go to a water cooler and you say, how are things? When does someone answer, I'm not busy? Like everyone else says, oh, so busy. And so the opportunity for people to feel overwhelmed is sort of like, it's almost by instinct, way too much on. And actually, I think helping people to reframe their current situation, helping them to reframe the risk, helping them to reframe the change is, for leaders, I think here is fundamental to what we do as leaders.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really lovely way to close, focusing on positive, and yeah, the fact that we were able to do this here with Alex's help here at Octopus Energy at a time when the world does feel pretty unsafe and fairly lacking in hope and optimism. I'm definitely feeling much more positive, so thank you again. If you could join me by thanking the speakers in the usual way, and Sarah and Cornwall do have a lovely time the rest of your time. Hopefully it's not too much hail. So thank you in particular for Sarah for bearing with us virtually, but if you can thank everybody, that would be great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I love those hearts on the screen, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, so those of you that can stick around, love to connect people that don't know each other. I'm probably one of the super connectors in the room because I know many of you. Happy to introduce people, have fun, have a drink of something, eat some pizza, listen to some of this amazing playlist that I've been trailing. And thank you again. Look out for more from the Castle Forum. We're just getting started again, really. So more events to come, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Hey, Sarah.